In today's agenda, we're going to be covering the following. We're going to highlight the added value of the long-term relationship between MichBusiness and BASIC and what is offered to our members, and also the agent community. We're going to review our compliance checklist and the applicable services, as well as understanding what is size threshold of employees and who needs to be compliant with certain regulations, and then assess our potential risk and penalties for noncompliance. And then we're also going to check out some other services that BASIC offers to members of MichBusiness at a discounted rate. So I wanted to mention that. And then moving along, we're going to also I wanted to mention some pieces here from MichBusiness's perspective as it relates to some of the things that we offer to our members and to the agent community as well. So we have things like our education, which pertain to peer groups and leadership training, our best practices, compliance, of course, our HR solutions, COBRA, SPD, Section 125, and ACA assistance. Healthcare, we work with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan and offer health plans. Our Transcend AHP, we have a supplier diversity spend program, as well as our small group back office support. On the networking side of things, we do have our events, and we connect with clients as it relates to business partnerships and industry leaders, making sure that folks are aware of the different opportunities that are available through MichBusiness that way. So really great content there. And then, of course, the economic efficiencies, fostering growth in MichBusiness in Michigan with businesses and discounts, special offerings. All of this is available to members of our association. So if you do have any questions on any of these items, you are more than welcome to connect with our office and connect with our team so that we can walk you through that. One of the other items I wanted to mention was we also have the Power of MichBusiness and what that means. So we are a certified women-owned business. We have our supplier diversity program. We offer a small group support program for agents and for brokers. We offer various compliance solutions and networking opportunities at signature events, our affinity peer groups and financial discounts and perks, our leadership training, and then there's also access to our sister brands, which you may have heard of, between Best and Brightest Companies to Work For and, of course, Corp Magazine as well. So all of these great things come with your membership as a part of MichBusiness, and we're more than happy to talk with you a bit further about any of these items, but I'm going to kind of steer us in the direction of introducing Joe Mapes, and Joe is going to walk us through the webinar today. So Joe is the Regional Vice President of Sales, and Joe, if you'd like to go through your brief bio here and kind of get us started with the webinar, we'll turn the reins over to you.
Okay, fantastic. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. As Jen mentioned, I'm Joe Mapes, Regional VP of Sales with BASIC, and it is a pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate everyone taking their time out of their day to hear a little bit more about our partnership with MichBusiness and some of our mutual, there's certain services that we offer mutually and others that are discounted through MichBusiness members for BASIC services. I have been with BASIC, and I'll actually touch on this a little bit later as well, but I've been with BASIC for 15 years. This is sort of all we do, so you're working essentially with people who are experts in a lot of these compliant-related matters. Some of them are clear-cut, some of them are a little bit more nuanced, and I'll be going through some of that stuff today with you. So again, I appreciate everyone taking the time out of your day to be here. I know we have this slotted for an hour. I can pretty much guarantee that I will not be taking an hour of your time, so there'll be plenty of time afterwards. If, like a Q&A is possible, I'm more than happy to answer any questions as anyone has. And forgive me, I'm going to walk over. There's a beeping that I would like to stop so that you don't hear this as I move through my presentation. So forgive me for that. Okay. So moving on, we have had a partnership with MichBusiness now for over 15 years. They've been a fantastic partner of ours, and they continue to add a ton of value to their members. So we're certainly thrilled to be partnered with MichBusiness, and we expect that partnership to continue well into the future. And I'm just kind of bouncing back on these next slides. So a little bit about, this slide obviously suggests here we're a Michigan-based company, as with MichBusiness. And, we were founded in 1989, so 2019 actually marks BASIC's 30th year in business. We've got 7 regional offices around the country, with our corporate headquarters located in Portage, Michigan. And just a little history on the company. We've got about 180 employees currently. and we are nationwide. We have over 15,000 clients, as I may have mentioned earlier. And our founder, Fritz Teutsch, actually started the company 30 years ago selling self-administered software out of the trunk of his car. He actually drove around the West Michigan region with a box full essentially of floppy disks in his car selling self-administered flexible spending account software. So that was actually the first service that we ever offered. He was approached by a large organization. And they said, hey, we love the idea of a flex plan, but we want nothing to do with the administration, which prompted Fritz to then get his TPA license. When I started 15 years ago, we had roughly 40 employees. Again, now we have 180 and multiple offices, so we've certainly had a pretty good growth curve over the past, 15, 20 years or so as well. Okay, so why Basic? As I mentioned earlier, we've been serving clients nationally now for over 30 years. This is actually our 30th year. With 15,000 clients nationwide. Our client retention rate is upwards of 95%. So we like to think that sort of speaks for itself. In our business, which is, somewhat commoditized, a lot of what we offer are regulated by the IRS. The thing that really sets companies apart is the customer experience, the experience your, HR people have in terms of working with Basic, and also your employees' experience. And we're very confident that we offer the highest level of service possible in the industry, again, within a sort of commoditized industry with products and services that a lot of other companies offer. So that's really what helps set us apart. We have a very diverse and broad suite of services, many of which I'll be touching on today. So generally speaking, we're a really great resource for all things compliance and HR benefit administration related. Our onboarding process is very smooth and efficient, and most services can be implemented within a week or two. There are a few that are a little bit more labor-intensive, census-intensive that might take a bit longer, but for the most part, 90% of our services can be up and running within a week or two. I believe I mentioned this. We have 7 offices nationwide, so we have clients really in every time zone and with the ability to be serviced during hours of roughly 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, whether you're on the West Coast or whether you're, here on the Eastern time zone. Additionally, as was mentioned, we offer preferred pricing to MichBusiness members, which really pays for itself in spades when utilizing their discounts. And there are certain features and services they offer for free, which again, it pays for itself in spades. So it's a fantastic organization and truly pays for itself to become a member. All right, so premium only plan. Oh, actually, you know what? I missed our Basic team. I'm sorry, I just scrolled by that. So really nice thing about Basic is our staff is loaded with many years of experience. Again, I've been with Basic going on 15 years. Many of our department managers have been around since the early days. So you'll find we have a depth of knowledge that's rather unique in the industry. Every client of Basics receives a dedicated account manager for each line of service, and our reps truly are experts since that they specialize in their specific line of coverage. We don't have one rep for all services. We have individual reps for every service that we offer, and they all, again, become experts. Our workforce is very stable. We have very low turnover, and again, many of our reps are tenured. We provide ongoing training, career development for employees, all of which are bonded, as the slide mentions here. Errors and omission coverage upwards of $2 million, which further protect our business and also our clients' business. And many of our managers have been around even longer than me. So I've been around 15 years. We have people that were the second, third employee with Basic who started 1990, 91, 92. So again, a lot of us have been around for quite a long time. And now I'm moving into the premium only aspect. And again, I'm guessing you'll have questions along the way. I believe we're holding off on those. You can certainly type your questions. We'll be making a list, and again, I'll be happy to answer anything you may have that comes up after the fact. So one of the services offered, this is actually available through MichBusiness, is the premium only plan. It's one of the more common services that Basic helps provide as well, but in either case, it's sort of your baseline Section 125 plan. And really what it is, many of you may be aware of this, but it's essentially a document that allows employees the option to voluntarily sign an election form agreeing to a salary reduction so that the employer can pay for their insurance premium as a business expense. So it's tax-free to the employee. It's pulled out before any taxes are taken out. And obviously it reduces payroll. So, a portion of the premium the employees are responsible for deducted right off the top. You pay absolutely no tax, no federal tax, no state tax, no FICA tax, which is Social Security and Medicare, or local taxes if applicable. So these are really regulated by the Department of Labor, and there are penalties for withholding pre-tax for employees' portion of those premiums without the appropriate documentation, which again is the Section 125, the premium-only plan portion. So really, when you're purchasing or receiving a premium-only plan, as an employer, you're putting it in the file. You're coding your payroll to have those deductions coming pre-tax, and if you're ever audited by the Department of Labor, you pull out your binder, you show that you have an adopted legal document, and you're going to be in good shape. And again, as I mentioned, employers also realize tax savings because they're matching FICA, they're reducing their state unemployment, and also their federal unemployment tax, as well as workers' comp taxes on all of those tax-advantaged employee funds. So their entire payroll is reduced for every dollar that's set aside pre-tax. And so from an employer's standpoint, you're typically saving far more money in taxes just by having that payroll reduction. And again, these are offered through MichBusiness, which is the great news is MichBusiness offers Section 125 plan documents for their Trailblazer members at no cost. So that's an awesome benefit for membership. Basic, we offer these services as well. We charge money for them. You can receive these documents right through MichBusiness at no cost. And again, at reducing your payroll tax, you're going to make money on this. So you're receiving a free service through MichBusiness membership, and you'll end up making money in, again, reducing your tax liability. So that's an awesome, awesome benefit. All right, so now moving forward, the next slide. I'm having a little bit trouble doing that. Okay, so full flex plans. So outside of the premium only plan document, Basic offers, and again discounted through MichBusiness membership, your full flex plans, which is going to include the other two options which are not included in the premium only plan. One is the medical reimbursement option, and the other is the dependent care option. So for medical reimbursement, this is an optional service you can offer employees that allow them to set aside money, again, completely pre-tax, that they can then use for out-of-pocket medical expenses that are not covered under the health plan. So whether that's copays, office visit copays, prescription copays, over-the-counter items, specific over-the-counter items, deductible on a health plan, vision expenses, dental expenses. The IRS has essentially a list. It's Publication 501 that sort of outlines all of the eligible expenses. But again, it's a great benefit to offer employees because, again, they're putting aside money for known expenses, medical expenses that aren't covered. And again, you as an employer are reducing your payroll tax liability. So really, it's a win-win-win. Basic charges an admin fee for the service. Employees receive tax-free money for medical expenses, and employers typically have the fees that they pay offset by the tax savings in reducing their payroll tax liability. So it's a great service to sell because truly everybody wins in this type of service. So there are no minimums for the flex plan. You do have to have a group health plan in place, however, in order to offer a plan, which is somewhat new. And it was part of the Affordable Care Act. Employers used to be able to offer flex plans without having a group plan in place. They do require group plans in place now in order to also offer flex, although you don't have to necessarily be an employee who's enrolled in the group plan. As long as you're eligible for the plan, you could have coverage elsewhere. You could be on a spouse's plan and still participate in the flex plan. The qualifier, though, is just having a group health plan in place. And then the dependent care option, of course, is going to be not so much for medical expenses, but for the care of a child or qualified adult dependents. Typically, you're going to see this used for daycare expenses, day camps, as long as they're not overnight, or anything essentially pre-kindergarten, preschool. And The maximum amount employees can set aside on a calendar year basis for the dependent care option is $5,000. And those of you that have dependents or have employees with dependents, you know that's pretty easy to blow through in a year if you've got full-time daycare. So in either case, that's these are essentially the two options as in addition to the premium-only portion, which again you have as a free benefit through MichBusiness. With Basic, we do offer debit cards, so employees love to be able to go to the doctor, go to the pharmacy, pick up a copay, and be able to use the debit card at the point of service. The technology in place right now for debit cards is incredibly strong. When I started at Basic 15 years ago, employees had to document just about every single claim that they used their card for. We had to verify that it was for an eligible transaction. These days, about 90% of our claims on FSA debit cards auto-adjudicate, meaning they do not require verification. Part of that is the technology they now have in place, a technology called IIAS. I won't get too much into that, but when you go to Meijer, for example, if you're here in Michigan, and you ring up your bread and beer and Band-Aids, if you use your Flex card at the register, that register recognizes the Flex eligible cards and will only pay for those that are eligible. Whereas in the past, you could have paid for everything, and then you'd have to show that, in fact, yeah, these 5 items aren't eligible. You'd have to pay back money. It was a little bit more labor-intensive for employees administratively. Now, again, 90% of these transactions auto-adjudicate, so it's become an even nicer benefit due to the ease of use of the card. And we also have a mobile claims technology. So if you have receipts and you're not using the debit card, employees can download our Benefits by Basic app if you have an Android or iPhone, and take essentially picture claims and submit for reimbursement directly through your phone. And we do daily claims processing, so I say typically within 2 to 4 days of the time an employee submits a claim, Basic is going to be reimbursing that claim, and of course debit card transactions you're paying right at the point of service, so you're not waiting at all for debit card transactions. But yeah, 2 to 4 days from the date you submit a manual claim to get reimbursed. So our turn time is really fast as well. All right, and I actually just touched on this next slide, so I'm just going to continue forward here and talk about ERISA a little bit. So essentially, what does ERISA stand for? I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this service. And again, a beautiful benefit here, again, for MichBusiness members is when you talk about ERISA, really the star of the show or the major component of ERISA when you're thinking of compliance is what would be called a wrap document or SPD. That's really the important part of ERISA in terms of compliance as an employer, and those are offered through MichBusiness, which is awesome. And again, I'm going to take a little bit deeper dive into what ERISA is and why you need to worry about it. So I'll just start with what does it stand for. So technically, it stands for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, which was enacted in September of 1974. And it's essentially a United States and labor law that establishes minimum standards for pension plans in private industry. It contains rules on the federal income tax effects of transactions associated with employee benefit plans and was really enacted to protect the interests of employee benefit plan participants and their beneficiaries by doing several things. One, requiring the disclosure of financial and other information concerning the plan to beneficiaries, establishing standards of conduct for plan fiduciaries, and providing for appropriate remedies and access to the federal courts. Responsibility for interpretation and enforcement of ERISA is divided among the Department of Labor, the Department of the Treasury, particularly the IRS, and the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. A few notes: governmental and church employers are exempt from these laws, so that's certainly worth noting. And so, what is an ERISA welfare benefit plan? Some examples are going to be a self-funded medical plan, a fully insured medical plan. So your standard Blue Cross PPO. You've got a health plan with Priority Health, whoever it may be. Dental plans, prescription plans, vision, health reimbursement arrangements, which some of you may have heard of or have in place, fully insured short-term or long-term disability, wellness programs that provide medical care, group term life, AD&D, travel, accident insurance, and even standard medical flexible spending accounts. So all of these are technically ERISA welfare benefit plans. So fringe benefits are not subject to ERISA. So your adoption assistance plans, your tuition reimbursement, and even transportation plans like your pre-tax parking, your Section 132 commuter benefits, or voluntary benefits that are paid 100% by the employee. I'm skipping over a few things I was going to touch on, but what I'll do is I'll go into the SPD, who must furnish an SPD. So plan administrators, who are, again, typically the employer is the plan administrator, you must provide these documents to participants and beneficiaries receiving benefits. When are you supposed to be providing these documents? You're supposed to distribute the SPD to new participants within 90 days after the employee becomes part of a plan. We'd recommend doing it as soon as you add somebody to a health plan, but you do have 90 days to provide the summary plan description to the plan participants. So let's talk a little bit about penalties. So the employer, again, usually who's the plan administrator, may be subject to fines and penalties for failure to distribute an SPD or an SMM if they don't have a current legal plan document. And failure to provide the requested information by a plan participant to beneficiary within 30 days can result in fines of up to $110 a day per participant. And a lack of an SPD can also trigger a plan audit, which is certainly something you're going to want to avoid. And insurers may distribute some of these to participants, typically they're FBCs, but again, employers are responsible for the SPD. And most employers, most employers will sort of assume, hey, I'm buying my Blue Cross plan, anything that I'm going to need, the documentation I'll need to be compliant is going to be included. And the fact is what they do provide is a plan summary, but they generally are not providing an actual plan document, which again is required under ERISA. So just because you go purchase a Blue Cross health plan does not mean you're receiving a plan document along with it. And so, you know, your options are looking at an attorney who's going to charge a lot of money, or, you know, going to MichBusiness, who can then also provide those wrap documents. And a wrap document is essentially taking all of your ERISA benefit plans and wrapping them into one master plan. The beauty of that is, A, it's efficient, it's clean and concise, it's one document. But if you're an employer with over 100 participants on these plans, there's a 5500 form filing requirement, which some of you may be familiar with. When you have a master document, you can actually do the form filing as an aggregate as opposed to filing 5 different 5500 forms. So there's just an efficiency built in to having these wrap documents as well. Let's see, I'm going to skip past a few things I'm looking at here. And I'll actually just touch on the 5500 forms and some of the penalties for not filing a 5500 form, which is something that BASIC does offer as a service. So if you've got 100 or more in your ERISA plans and you're required to do the 5500 form filing, that's something BASIC can help with. And we can even help employers identify whether or not a 5500 form filing is even required. We can also help with PCORI fee filings, which is basically your tax form 720. We can help prepare a summary of annual reports for distribution, and that's something that's supposed to be distributed to employees 2 months after the due date of the 5500 form filing. So I'm not going to go too much more in detail on this stuff, but again, the beauty of your membership with MichBusiness is those wrap documents are available directly through MichBusiness. And I just touched on essentially this, but I'll kind of look through here to see if I missed anything. So again, with your MichBusiness membership, what's included? So you get the complimentary SPD wrap document. So that right there is major, because if you go to an attorney for that, they're going to charge at least several hundred, if not over $1,000 to create that wrap document. So that's a massive benefit to you. That's not common. A lot of times employers, like I said, are going to attorneys or third parties, and they're paying hundreds, if not over $1,000. It includes medical, life, AD&D, long-term disability, essentially every service that I just mentioned, any type of coverage, short-term disability, dental, medical vision. And MichBusiness SPD is available 24/7 via their secure online portal. And again, a complimentary Section 125 premium only plan. Awesome membership benefits through MichBusiness. And their SPD is compliant, easy to use. Members can create the SPD in 30 minutes or less. So that's awesome. And now again, as I mentioned, kind of taking it a step further, Basic can step in to help with some of the non-wrap document services. So all these SPDs, the wrap doc you're able to receive through MichBusiness is fantastic. If you require some more robust help with ERISA as it relates to the 5500 form filings or even non-discrimination testing, we can do those on a standalone basis for medical, vision, dental plans. We do them automatically for our clients who have, for example, a health reimbursement or a flexible spending account. Those also require non-discrimination testings, and that's something that Basic offers as well. Okay, moving on to COBRA. So COBRA generally requires that group health plan sponsors by employers with 20 or more full-time employees in the prior year. COBRA essentially requires you to offer employees and their families continuation of health coverage in certain instances where coverage under the plan would otherwise end. So what you see quite often is if an employee is terminating and they have insurance, essentially if you've got 20 or more full-time employees, you've got to offer a continuation of coverage. Now employees are paying that full premium, so you're not necessarily out the money as an employer, but it's just something you have to offer them to make sure that they have if they need to continue their insurance without a gap, they can pick up your coverage. But again, if the premium is $1,500 a month, that's what the employee is going to pay. And so what you find often is employees are not picking up COBRA, but it is nice gap insurance while an employee is either between employment or losing benefits, and they just need to make sure that they continue to remain insured. So a way to really calculate the key really with COBRA, when I say 20 or more full-time employees, what you do is you look at what's a full-time employee. And every employer may have a little bit of a different definition in their employee handbook of what a full-time employee is. But let's just say, for example, you consider a full-time employee 40-hour-a-week worker, or even 35. Let's just use 40 as an example because it's easy math. So while they're looking at 20 or more full-time, the IRS would still say you need to count your part-time employees as a fraction of a full-time employee. For example, if you have an employee working 20 hours a week, well, obviously if your full-time is considered 40, someone's working 20, they would be considered a half of one employee. And the key here is if you have 20 or more full-time, again, factoring in your part-time employees as fractions of employees, if you have 20 or more for at least 6 months of a calendar year, you then hit the COBRA qualifier, meaning you now are required to offer COBRA the following calendar year. So if you had 15 employees, and let's say you're going into 2019, you have 17 employees, and then June 30th, for example, you now have over 20 full-time. Well, if you maintain that 20 for the next 6 months, beginning in January of 2020, you're now required to offer that continuation of coverage. So that's just sort of some of the details, and there are certain penalties involved. And really, by outsourcing COBRA to Basic, employers can greatly reduce their exposure to risk and free up a lot of time to your active employees. Basic sends all COBRA event letters. We can handle carrier ads and terms if you'd like. And it's a full service offering. So we offer premium billing, online premium collection. We have real-time online event reporting as well, and can very easily take over the billing and collection services of existing COBRA participants. So if you've got people on COBRA, we can pick that up and again take it where you left off. We have toll-free support, and really good news here, again, as it relates to MichBusiness and Basic, there is special pricing available to all MichBusiness Trailblazers, and for those, I believe it's under 100 insured, it's just $30 a month. Yeah, up to 99 lives, that's right. And that is a huge discount. I can tell you based on our street rates, that is, I mean, that's saving probably 60% over what you'd pay if you came directly to basic. So the benefit membership of the discounted COBRA we offer through MichBusiness is huge. And we have a ton of clients that set up COBRA through MichBusiness. Again, it's a really inexpensive service that they offer at a massive discount. So that partnership has been great. Retiree billing, I'll just kind of move on to the next service. We also offer retiree billing services. It actually functions right on our COBRA platform. So it's similar in terms of, we collect premiums. We can do that via direct deposit, through credit card, or by check. Many retirees like to use our coupon booklets, and they want to submit premiums by check. That's certainly an option as well. And again, ACH credit card payments are available too. And this would be for more retiree, health plan billing. Sometimes employers would prefer not having to bill directly, so they can utilize basic. We aggregate payments and send them back to the employer to then use them to offset the health plan bill that they'd receive directly. So that's worth keeping in mind. ACA reporting, so for those of you who work for an employer that's an ALE or an applicable large employer with 50 or more full-time equivalent employees, you're probably familiar with the newer ACA reporting requirements. Certain information must be filed with the IRS and statements provided to your full-time employees about the health plan coverage that you offer. And Basic's ACA Elevate service, just moving on to the next slide. Again, the reporting requirements for ACA fall under two different sections. One is Section 6055 and Section 6056 of the IRS Code. So if you're a group who's fully insured, your insurance carrier is typically responsible for the 6055 reporting requirement. Although if you're self-funded, if you have a self-funded medical plan, you're essentially looked at as the carrier. You would actually have that responsibility in lieu of the insurance carrier itself. So again, but whether your health plan is fully insured or self-funded, the employer is always going to be responsible for that second part of the reporting, which is the 6056 reporting requirement. Basic's ACA Services ensures that you're going to stay fully compliant. We can help create the forms. We can e-file directly with the IRS on your behalf, as well as handle the mailing requirement. And if you're an employer, who's filed in the past or failed to file for whatever reason, you may have received, we see these all day long these days, you may have received a very nice letter from the IRS, and it's called a 226J form. And it kind of outlines the fact that you didn't do something you were supposed to do. And if you don't respond to that letter, you may get what's even worse, a 5899, which is the letter that suggests you have a very large penalty coming your way with the IRS. The good news, if you do happen to receive those, Basic is able to help not only take that process over, but respond and very likely help you reduce that penalty to zero. I can tell you just yesterday, I worked with a group. It's got roughly 600 employees. They didn't file their ACA reports like they were supposed to for the past 2 years, and they just got their 5899 letter outlining a penalty of $180,000 that they owe the IRS. So they contracted to work with Basic to help respond to those letters. So again, not only can we help you with the reporting piece, but if you happen to have not done it, or you've avoided it and now you're getting really nasty letters from the IRS, again, we've got a service that can help you respond and get those penalties drastically reduced or even waived. So that's definitely worth keeping in mind. It's a newer service that we offered, and we're getting a lot of traction because we have a lot of groups we're finding out never did the reporting in the first place. So I'm going to just move on to the next section, which is FMLA, another one of our core service offerings. So if you're an employer with more than 50 employees for at least 20 work weeks in the current or preceding calendar year, you're required to offer FMLA, which is essentially a requirement that you offer employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid yet job-protected leave for certain medical reasons, and health benefits must be maintained during FMLA. So some common examples with FMLA are going to be, you're off for the birth or care of a newborn child, placement of an employee for adoption assistance or foster care, you have an immediate family member with a serious health condition, or you want to take a medical leave where an employee is unable to work because of a serious health condition. And as with COBRA, there's a significant employer liability for not offering FMLA or for not handling that correctly. And employers look to outsource for a number of reasons. Many of you that have employees, population over 50 employees, you may want to be fully compliant. You don't want to be exposed to private health information, or have to worry about HIPAA violations, being exposed to things you really shouldn't be. Some employers are just really tired of chasing employees down for medical certifications, and they don't want to be in a position of being a bad guy or being the bad guy, so to speak, when, for example, they have to deny an FMLA claim. And they may not be totally confident you're handling it correctly. So again, as with COBRA, you can think of outsourcing FMLA really as insurance against potential liability. And of course, it certainly frees up the time if you have a lot of events taking place. It frees up a lot of time and energy for your HR team, allowing them to focus on the day-to-day functions and one less compliance-related issue to have to worry about. I will sort of go back and tell you that just from experience in the 15 years I've been at Basic, when it comes to IRS auditing plans or getting involved, I can tell you far and away the calls I've received more personally have been from the Department of Labor, and it's always regarding COBRA. It's typically savvy employees who understand the rules of COBRA. They understand when letters should go out. They recognize if letters didn't go out. And, they have a grudge to pick or a bone to pick with their former employee, and they're going to call the DOL saying, hey, I never got my COBRA letters. They're not compliant. And they do follow up on those. I've been called several times directly for current clients. And they're not particularly friendly when they're calling to dig into a case where they have an employee who doesn't believe that COBRA was handled correctly, and they will dig into it. So if you're a Basic client, obviously we document and send all of our letters registered mail, so we have time stamped on all of our mailings. So again, similar with FMLA, you're really reducing your liability by outsourcing it and not having to worry whether it's being done correctly. And obviously that protects you from potential fines and penalties as well. So Basic's baseline FMLA service is what we call our FMLA Ease program. And it really provides details, policy information, and documentation to ensure employer compliance. So what we do initially is we start by helping employers develop an FMLA policy if they don't have one. Some employers have a current policy. We'll help review that policy that's in place. We might recommend changes. For example, do you run short-term disability concurrent with FMLA or not? We may recommend that you do and then explain why. So we make sure your policy is in place. So we also are going to send out necessary notices, issue doc certifications. We're going to handle following up with your employees on those. We would then make an approval or denial decision, all of which employers can track on their admin or administrative dashboard. We call it our Basic dashboard. And you're going to have also a dedicated account rep with Basic that you work with, so you have a one-point person you can contact with any questions, whether it's continuous leave, whether it's intermittent leave. You've got your point person to essentially send that information to, all of again, which is stored on our dashboard. We also help employers identify potential pattern absences. So people talk about FMLA as the Friday, Monday Leave Act. Well, if we find out an employee is taking 9 Mondays and 8 Fridays and no Tuesday or Wednesdays, we may find that somewhat suspicious. And we'll then contact you as an employer to say, hey, we've potentially identified some pattern absences here, and this is something that you might want to look into, maybe having a second opinion done, dig in and ask the doc if the absences are consistent with the condition. It'll be up to the employer. But again, all of this is tracked on an online portal, and as an employer, you can be as hands-off as you want as it comes to this. In addition to our FMLA, we do offer full-blown leave management, so like a full absence management program. So not only can we handle FMLA administration, but our full-blown absence management service dovetails nicely. It's basically a system put in place that tracks all absences, all of which are reported via an online portal at Basic or an 800 number. And you can even break out locations or divisions. So maybe you have 4 locations and you want each of your plant managers or division managers to only have access to their population of employees' call-offs. You can do that, so you can structure it so that it's tiered, so that only certain location managers see their employees. They would receive texts or emails if an employee calls in, all of which are time-stamped. And it's proprietary software, so it's software that BASIC developed, and it's really quite slick, and it's a very efficient and intuitive system to use. So that's, again, worth keeping in mind. I'm trying to move forward here because I said I wouldn't take an hour, and I'm finding I'm creeping up on that rather quickly. So I won't take too much time as I move into the next few slides. Additional services the BASIC offers through MichBusiness at a discounted rate, health reimbursement arrangements. So if you're an employer that wants to reimburse employees for certain medical expenses, that type of thing falls under a different section, Section 105. Again, it's tax-free to the employee, tax-free to the employer, or a business expense of the employer, and allows you to reimburse certain medical expenses legally and on a tax advantage basis. Some of you may have them in place hooked up with your health plan where you may be reimbursing a deductible. This is basically what an HRA is. It's an example of a plan design. You'd be reimbursing an employee for a portion of their deductible, for example. BASIC also can help with health savings accounts. So we're not the bank, but we actually can work with just about any bank. So if you have a high deductible, a qualified high deductible health plan, and you want to help, if you would like help setting up HSAs, if you'd like help moving money into health savings accounts, either employer or employee contributions, that's something BASIC can help with. And again, we can work with any bank. We have banking relationships, so we can set everybody up with one particular bank, or employees can go pick whatever bank they want, and BASIC, again, can help manage the flow of funds to those accounts on behalf of employers. We also have an HR Assist Lite service. It's really a portal that's great for smaller employers that don't have a dedicated HR team. Through our HR Assist Lite services, you'd have access to our HR On Demand module, including what I think is the best part of this, access to our Ask the Pro feature. And it's going to allow you to pose questions to experts and receive response. So if you have, a compliance-related question about ACA reporting, you can actually submit a question through our HR Assist Lite, and we then farm out those questions to appropriate people. So on the back end, we have VPs of HR, we have attorneys. So we've got a fairly broad array of people and with certain expertise that we can farm out these questions to, and that to me pays for itself. It's almost like having an attorney on staff, although they're not going to get super deep in the weeds on certain things. It's more for basic sort of questions, but it is a nice feature to our HR Assist program. That program also includes custom handbook development, custom job descriptions, HR checklists, policy and benefits library, as well as law alerts. So there's a lot of additional information available through that. And again, you can always contact me about this if you have any questions after the fact, or you ever would like a proposal. We're always available to help with that. Moving on, payroll. So BASIC offers a payroll and time and attendance service. We typically go through a needs analysis prior to quoting these services, so we can provide a custom proposal that's very specific to your individual company needs. For example, not all employers need biometric clocks. So we want to make sure when we quote it, it's customized, it's accurate. You're not having to feel nickel and dime by little add-ons. We like to give you a number, and that's what the cost is. And yeah, okay, so I just touched on the time and attendance. Again, we'll do custom quoting after essentially a full-blown needs analysis. Okay, so this was obviously me just talking at you for the last 40 minutes, but that does conclude my presentation. I appreciate you allowing me the time to kind of rip through these services and hear a little bit more about our partnership with MichBusiness. And with that, if we do have time, I'm certainly happy to take any questions or answer any questions that you may have, but I'll turn it back over, Jan, to you. And again, thank you so much for sitting in today. I appreciate your attendance.
Hi, Joe. It's Jennifer Warner. So thank you so much for walking us through the presentation. You did a great job, and we did have a couple questions. So why don't we go ahead and answer those and let you give some feedback here. So number one is, how is COBRA admin managed with BASIC? And they're also asking about the qualifying events entered through an online portal or submitted by email or fax.
Yeah, Great question. Could you repeat the first part of that, Jennifer?
Sure. They're just asking about how COBRA, how COBRA is administered and managed through BASIC. Just asking that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we have several ways of working with employers depending on the needs of the employer. The vast majority of our clients have or use exactly what you mentioned. We have an online COBRA portal where HR is inputting events as they occur. So if you have new employees added to a health plan, or you have a termination or some other type of qualifying event, you'd have a login with BASIC where you would essentially log in, you would give us the basic employee information, the term date, what coverage they had, all of which would already be loaded in your portal, so you could do like a drop down and pick Blue Cross PPO. You hit submit, BASIC sends out the initial notice or the qualifying event. We'd send out the election notice. We would break down the timeline in terms of when they would have to have that returned if they wanted to make an election to pick up COBRA as a participant. And from there, that's really all the employer would have to do, but you would also typically want to then contact your carrier to let them know, hey, we've got to take an employee off as of the end of March. So you're notifying BASIC so we can handle the paperwork and also work with the employee if they elect. We do the billing and collections. And then we would then funnel any premium back to the employer that you would use then to offset the group health plan bill that you would get that would include that COBRA participant. And again, on the back end, though, you would typically want to also contact your insurance agent or, if you work with your carriers directly, to pull them off the plan. If somebody elects, we're going to notify you as the employer. We're going to ask you to then put them back on the plan retroactively to their termination date so that there's no lapse in coverage. So again, you take them on and off the plan, but we will be notifying you if and when that needs to happen. Taking it a step further, we do have an option to where BASIC can manage your ads and terms. So we do have the option, and it's a slightly additional, the additional cost is minimal, but it does allow us to actually manage adding the ads and terms directly with the carriers. Most employers don't do that because everyone has their own way of doing it. For those of you that do COBRA or have done COBRA, you probably know once an employee terminates, picks up COBRA, and is now paying for COBRA on a monthly basis, there's a 30-day grace period that employees have to submit payment. So if your payment's due on the 1st, it's still due on the 1st, and as an employer, you can kind of decide, do you want to pull them off right away? If it's due the 1st, you didn't get the money on the 1st, you pull them off, or do you give them a 5 or 10-day grace period? Because every employer is a little different, we usually will see that employers kind of handle that on their own. Some may wait 5 or 10 days because they know, John always submits his premium on the 8th of every month. And if you do take them off on the 1st, but they do pay anytime within the next 30 days, you've got to put them back on the plan. So if you're pulling them off the 1st of every month, you could be pulling someone off and on every single month because they paid 3 days later. So again, most employers handle that. We can if you'd like, but it's going to be, very consistent. And there might be a lot of ads and terms going on because we're not going to give them a 20-day grace period necessarily.
Okay. Joe, thank you. That was,
go ahead.
Great. I was just going to say there's a follow-up question on COBRA as well, so I want to make sure we have time to get to that too. So they're asking about our COBRA admin fee with BASIC, and that is at a $30 rate, and it allows for so many qualifying events before the employer is charged an extra at the end of the year, and somebody's asking us to verify that for them. So do you know that offhand?
We usually don't. That $30 fee is pretty standard, although in our agreements we do reserve the right. I believe if events exceed 25% of the total number of employees, we kind of reserve a right to charge an additional fee. Because what happens is an employer, let's say they start with BASIC, they have 30 employees. Well, they might grow to 190 employees over 5 years, and if they don't tell us that, we're doing a lot of events for a group of 30, right? So they really have 180 employees. We thought they had 30, but now we're doing, 20 events a month for a group of 30. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So for us, it's really a stopgap to help us catch, hey, we thought you had only 25, but, you've got 200 and you never told us. So, again, it's only if you've got a really high percentage of events that exceed, I believe, 25% of the number of insured that we have on file, because we know typically that would be a fairly high number. So the answer is yes and no. It doesn't affect most employers, but if you happen to have a ton of, turnover, then you could potentially receive like an overage charge for an event over 25%. But again, it's a very small number of employers that typically affects.
Okay, Joe, thank you for clarifying that. And if there's any follow-up questions, of course, agents and also clients are welcome to connect with MichBusiness's team and ask any of those specific questions that relate to their business. I did have a follow-up question on FMLA as well, coming in from another person, and they want to know how FMLA works for less than 49 or less employees, they're asking.
So if you have less than 50 employees within a 75-mile radius is typically the radius they look at, then there really is no requirement to offer FMLA. You're not held to that same standard if you're less than 50 employees. It really doesn't affect you until you're over 50, just like COBRA is not something you'd want to offer until, you hit 20 or more full-time employees for at least 6 months of the prior calendar year.
Okay, Joe, and there's a follow-up to that, too. They're also wondering if there's temporary employees. Does that count towards the 50 benchmark?
I think the answer to that is it depends on how temporary that employee is, like how often they work. And that's something we can help employers figure out. So if you say, hey, you know what, we've got 60 employees, 20 of them are temporary, do we need to do this? We can actually hook you up with our FMLA team who can go through the detail, find out a little bit more about how many hours an employee averages for how many months. So it's not necessarily a yes or no answer. It depends, but it is something that we can help groups figure prior to engaging in a service contract, because obviously we don't want to be charging or have an employer pay for something that they don't need to be offering.
And Joe, another question we're just wondering about as well, regarding the ACA reporting that you had mentioned in the service that BASIC offers, is there a deadline in order to participate in the program if a group wanted to elect BASIC as their provider?
So we will actually take on groups. This is a perfect example. So for 2018 reporting, even though at this point companies are filing late, we just had our deadline for helping clients with 2018 reporting end on March 4th. So we actually were taking clients up until March 4th to help with the 2018 reporting. Obviously, we wouldn't recommend waiting that long because you're going to be filing late. It's obviously certainly better to file late than never. But the deadline's different every year, but again, this year for 2018, our deadline was March 4th. So really, I would suggest if employers are looking for help, it's always best to engage in a service towards the end of the year, or at least, shortly after the first, so that you have time. Because with everybody, including BASIC, there is like a spreadsheet, so there's census data we need to capture, information about your health plan, information about, was an employee covered for the full year or for a partial year? And it's nice to have some time to be able to, make sure you're getting comprehensive census information to us within the timeline necessary for us to file on time and submit the employee letters out on time. Although, again, we can do it late as well. It's just, best to not wait till March 4th if you don't have to.
Okay. And it looks like, Joe, that's all the questions that we have so far as it relates to today's webinar. So what I'd like to do is just encourage everybody that's still with us on the line to connect with MichBusiness or the BASIC team. As Joe has mentioned, we have a great partnership and enjoy working together and servicing the community for businesses. So reach out to either a department, and we are happy to help out in any way. So we will be recording this. Webinar has been recorded, and we will be posting that on the MichBusiness website. So look for that in the next few days here as well. And if you do have a request for a copy of the slides, you would need to request that from MichBusiness. So we'll make sure we have those for you as well. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar. And Joe, I want to say thank you again for helping us out today. Did a great job, and we really appreciate the support and the relationship with BASIC.
Yeah, well, likewise, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.